described as a soil reef, in that microbes, enormous amount of biodiversity microbes can live in that. That's why they put it in soil. But we've also been looking at it to clean water. And we found that the University of Florida actually was one of the lead, all the universities are looking at this biochar stuff now, by the way, and it just, every year you see it, more and more of them. But University of Florida was one of the first to look at it for cleaning water, and particularly wastewater. So they're working with us at Lakewood Ranch and have helped develop it's actually a neat little pellet that we use that absorbs the phosphorus. Yeah. And we can use the soil minute afterwards. Yes, sir.
We live near the Senior Friendship Center, and we notice that the county puts a lot of effort in cutting all the shrubbery that's on the banks going down to the water.
Intercoastal?
Yes, and I'm wondering, is that a good thing to do? It looks like it would increase erosion.
That's probably the WCA&D, isn't it?
Yeah, it's WCA&D maintains that, and they do so by federal guidelines. The answer to your question is
It's the federal government.
Is it a good thing to do now? No, you'd be better off with bank stabilizing hardwoods, nutrient uptake plants that are not constantly harvested and left to rot in place, thus reintroducing the nutrients that they did absorb are now right back in the system.
It certainly doesn't look as good either when they cut all that down.
Yeah, it is the WECID, the West Coast Inland Navigational District, and that is under a federal national security charge.
It protects us from German submarines. You laugh, that's why.
That's
Can I
right,
ask
yeah.
you one more thing about,
Yeah.
I understand that dog waste is being processed now. Is that, did I understand that?
Dog waste being processed?
He thought he
That's
heard
my
that.
ears.
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
I'm not aware of that. Maybe. What,
How does the average well-intentioned, educated person know what the HOA is putting on the lawns? Is it how?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what I would recommend is you could either get on the board or ask your board members. But see, at the end of the day, that's who's negotiating the contracts for the vendors that do that, okay? And so the ones that we work with, what we do is we've developed basically a template. We pulled from Sarasota County's fertilizer ordinance, from the irrigation ordinance, from the landscape ordinance, the key things that can go right into a contract with whoever you hire to do that work. So now, not only are they abiding by what they're supposed to be doing anyway, but you've leveled the playing field. One community, Deer Creek in Palmer Ranch, they have 30-some vendors that work within, and they made them all commit to do this.
Where can we get that guideline?
It will be in the playbook, but if you give me your address, I'll send it to you. Yeah, and just, so the contracts that your community has with the people that do the irrigation or the landscaping or the fertilizer, this would fit right in, okay? And then you can hold them accountable too.
And I would add that these home sites in Deer Creek and Stony Brook and Palmer Ranch, these are $600,000 homes with lush green landscapings. They are beautiful. So they are not suffering, this scare tactic of you're going to have a brown lawn, you're going to, none of that has happened. In fact, we have seen numerous homes in these two subdivisions. Rather than featuring in the real estate for sale magazines, a classical photograph of the stucco finished exterior home, they have photographs of their backyards where now these ponds are producing birds, clean water, and fish, and that's what they're featuring to sell their homes. 5 or 6 birds flushing from the low-mow zones adjacent to the stormwater lakes in their communities.
Healthy biology is good for property values too. Yes, sir.
New Hampshire prohibits phosphorus in dishwasher detergent
Yeah.
because they've had problems with their lakes. Have we thought about anything like that?
No, but that's a good idea. It's laundromat, it's restaurants. Yeah. Again, in this area, By the way, when you get fertilizer at Home Depot or whatever, the number for phosphorus should be 0. You don't need to have phosphorus fertilizer here because it's already in the soil. Coincidentally, the golf course industry has known this for a long time. They don't use phosphorus in fertilizer for golf courses in Southwest Florida because it's naturally occurring here in the soil. Okay, Sam, you want to?
No, I was just gonna wrap up if there are no other questions.
I got
Yeah.
one question. For the city of Venice, is it practical for us to tell a developer, if he's going to develop 20 acres of land, that he has to compost the trees that exist there that he's taken down, or bring in sawdust or something to put into the soil? And what percentage, if you even tried to tell a developer that the land has to be composted to a certain level to help with the runoff of nitrogen?
I love your question. Because I've said that, and that's my one pet peeve, is that we come in and we clear cut all the landscape and we stockpile all this, which is really centuries of soil building, okay? Because you don't need to fertilize or water the pine flatwoods, the piney woods or whatever. And then we stockpile it and burn it. It's insane. And then we dig lakes with dead sediment and we put that on, fill the landscape, and then wonder why we have to water and fertilize stuff to get it to grow. Yes, developers, I would love to move to a position where developers would at least salvage that material. It would be to their benefit because it's actually providing topsoil that would help their landscapes grow better. They wouldn't have to water as much. The people that live there wouldn't have to fertilize as much. So I think that's a great idea. I've thought about that a lot too, and before I retire, I'd love to find a developer that would do that, because I think that makes a lot of
But
sense.
can the city put in their land development regulations that, okay, you have to take a certain percentage of these trees, or you have to have the soil tested for a certain percentage that's been composted?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think that you should probably work with the development community to build their understanding of it and not just hit them blindly with it, but I think that's a great idea. It should go in the code.
Gainesville did something like that.
Who did?
Yeah, Gainesville.
Yeah,
Gainesville.
Gainesville did something like
I
that.
have a new bumper sticker that I want to make, and it goes something like, "We need to stop treating our soil like dirt." Because that's what we do. I mean, it is the most valuable living entity that, you know, it sustains all life on the planet, and we treat it like dirt.
Yeah. Mayor?
In answer to the gentleman's question, we are in the process of rewriting those LDRs. Suggestions like that should be sent to the city council and to the environmental committee that are working right now on writing those things. And those type of suggestions, personally, I'll pay attention to them, and I will try to get other people to pay attention to them, because those are the type of things that we do want to get into the LDRs if we can right now, because this is
It's
the
the
one chance we
opportunity.
have. And if people are paying attention to what's going into those LDRs, we stand a much better chance of cleaning up our environment. Now is the time to pay attention.
It makes an enormous amount of sense. It really
Okay,
does.
I mean, the more input we get from the public that this is what you want, the more likely we are to get into those LDRs.
So I just want to make one closing statement, because I know it's running late, and I'm texting my wife, and she's, you know, waiting. No, she's right, she's waiting the guests on me, so I don't want to prolong my own ultimate, yeah. So, you know, as we were looking at this nutrient reduction thing, one of the things that we noticed was that it is impossible, virtually impossible, to reduce your nutrient impact without also reducing your carbon impact. Virtually everything you do to reduce nutrients is also going to reduce your carbon footprint. And so I started to thinking about this, and you know, you always hear the term carbon sequestration, right? So just like Steve explained that nitrogen cycle, well, that nitrogen cycle got knocked out of whack because of two guys named Carl Haber and Fritz Bosch, who are these German scientists that figured out how to take the nitrogen from the air and turn it into liquid nitrogen that can be readily available from plants. So from that day on in the 1920s, the natural cycle of nitrogen on the planet Earth has been forever screwed up, because we are now producing far too much nitrogen for the natural system to sequester or to digest or to absorb. The same thing is happening with carbon. Rather than Fritz Haber and Carl Bosch doing it with nitrogen, we have now taken eons, centuries and centuries and centuries of carbon sources that were stored in our soil, safe and secure, just like nitrogen used to be stored safe and secure in our atmosphere. And we have been exploding it in internal combustion engines at a rate that the planet Earth has never seen. So you're seeing the same thing happen in the nitrogen cycle in terms of the disruption of a human activity that we're seeing with the carbon cycle with human activity. And for me, it just helped kind of put things into perspective and made it, at least for myself, a novice, a little bit easier to understand.
If you build soil, you're sequestering carbon too, at the same time.
Are there any other questions?
This isn't really a question, but I just want to say thank you so much to the Community Foundation for doing this and everybody that worked on it, because this gives a rational framework for decisions that could have a profound impact on our environment and our waterways. And just thank you for doing this. This is huge.
I agree. Can we give Steve Suau and John Menace? Thank you. So for those of you that I don't know, I'm Samantha Gentrup. I'm with Hands Along the Water. Brian is my better half there. I want to thank UUCOB for having us and hosting us tonight. I want to thank all of you for coming. Will you raise your hand if you learned something tonight? I love it. I'm a teacher. That's my day job, my life, actually. So it's wonderful to see that people are learning from these experiences. And I have to say, sitting in the audience, listening to the presentation, which was invaluable, and then hearing your questions. 2 years ago, when we started having these events, the questions the audience was asking were very different. It was beginner level information, and we've been on this journey together now for a couple years, some of us a lot longer than that, but just watching the level of the questions changing, we're learning. And that gives me a lot of hope, and I'm very happy about that the level of questions that we're asking. I want to give a shout out to Ron Feinsod in the back. He's the mayor of Venice, so thank you, Ron. I think that says a lot that he's here tonight. He's very interested in this issue. He ran on a campaign that really involved water and the environment. I'm proud that you're here. Thank you. Sometimes as a teacher, I say, okay, how can we take all of this and kind of put it into manageable chunks for us to walk away with? Because in this journey of protecting water and the environment, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, right? It's easy to feel like there's so much information, where do I begin? So I've got a few steps here, and it's not a playbook, and it's just kind of my wording that makes sense to me. What can we walk away with? Well, we can definitely support this playbook. We can definitely be talking to our elected officials, which I'll get to in just a second. But fertilizers came up a lot tonight. We don't use fertilizers at our house. We use compost. We've gotten rid of our lawn for the most part, and we've planted native plants. We plant food for us, and that's Brian's job. And I feed all of the birds and the butterflies and the bees with pollinator plants. So you could put Florida native plants in. So replacing that lawn, and it was interesting to me, a lot of people say, well, my HOA won't let me do that. My HOA tells me I have to have this lawn and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's actually against the law. There's a Florida law that protects you, that you can plant Florida native plants. Your HOA can't stop you from that. And it's on our Hands Along the Water website if you want to cite the actual law, which I think is important. One of the pictures up here had the agriculture industry. So we choose what to eat 3 times a day, and our diet plays a huge impact on these nutrients. So we could reduce our meat consumption. It's not a popular topic to talk about, but it is real life because it's something we do 3 times a day. And there's almost 2,000 gallons of water that goes into raising 1 pound of beef, which when I learned that, my mind was blown. Plus, the way that animals are raised today, 90% are on these CAFOs, which is our government's term for it. And they're fed GMO crops, which are heavily sprayed with chemicals. And the animals' waste is put into manure lagoons, and when we have hurricanes and floods and runoff, it ends up in our waterways, and that adds a huge amount of nutrients. So that's a difference we can make 3 times a day. We can replace our Roundup usage. I think maybe this audience is not really using Roundup, but we can replace Roundup and glyphosate with things that are better for us. There's more natural mixtures. We could either hand pull the weeds, we can let the weeds be, we can spray them with something like Epsom salt soap and detergent there. We have rain barrels at our house. That's another way, and Steve's talked about this with us before. These are practical homeowner things we can do. Keeping more water on your property than letting it run off of your property is important. So we have rain barrels. Brian can help you install those. Plastic reduction. I went and grabbed my water bottle from my seat. Reducing our plastic uses. I know that doesn't directly relate to the presentation tonight, but microplastics are everywhere and in all animals and possibly in us. And reducing our plastic usage, for us, we started with plastic grocery bags. We got rid of those, we stopped using those, and we stopped using plastic water bottles. So reusable water bottles are important. And finally, building soil. Brian is taking a class and talks to me all the time about building soil. I highly encourage you to start learning about soil. I love the bumper sticker idea. It's not just dirt, right? I thought it was just dirt. Now I know otherwise. I've been educated. And finally, Steve mentioned earlier that Brian spoke at the Sarasota County Commissioners meeting. And Steve had a slide up here from the Sarasota Water Atlas on the levels of nitrogen in the water. And Brian was the one that presented that chart to the commissioners, and they had never seen it before. It's their own data. They had no idea. It was a really shocking moment for us, and we realized there's an educational thing that needs to take place here because the commissioners need to be more aware, like we're becoming more aware, and then what we do is we become more aware, we go to the commissioners and we ask for things because we are their constituents. So the more educated that we get, we start contacting our elected officials. We go and speak. You get minutes to go and speak at these meetings. So go and ask for what you want. Organize together and go and speak. Go out to celery fields. Has anybody been to celery fields? If you haven't been there, please go. It's beautiful, peaceful, and it's a project that Steve and John, were you part of that too? I'm sorry.
Steve built it, I stole it.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. It's
They've
beautiful.
just opened the park on the north side of it too.
Okay, awesome. It's a very peaceful, tranquil place, and it's a great example of what we can do when we're doing things correctly. And finally, there's something called shifting baseline syndrome. Has anybody heard of that? Shifting baseline syndrome. It was from we went to a conference last Saturday. I had not heard of it before that conference, but as a teacher working with young people every day, it's alarming. Shifting baseline syndrome means each generation's concept of what's normal changes. So the kids that I'm working with today, the environment, the nature, the birds, the animals, the frogs, such and such and such, is different than when I was a kid, which is different than when my mom was a kid, which is different than when my grandmother was a young girl, because our baseline has changed. So the reality that the kids are in today is different, and it's going to change with each generation unless we try to put a stop to this and rebuild like what we're talking about. Let's feature those ponds and the birds when we're trying to sell our real estate instead of plain green, dead lawns, right? And I mean dead like there's no living organisms other than the grass. So thank you for coming tonight. Brian?
Just wanted to say a few things, a few facts about soil health. 1 tablespoon of healthy soil contains as many microbes as there are humans on this planet. And also by increasing your soil health, 1 acre by 1%. So if you increase 1% of soil organic matter on 1 acre of land, you can retain between 17,000 and 25,000 gallons of water just on that 1 acre. So if you imagine developers building soil health on all these communities, the city of Venice, the Sarasota County, increasing their soil organic matter by 1% in that whole area, imagine how much more water we can retain in the soil instead of worrying about this runoff.
Isn't he great? So I'm trying to convince him to teach some soil health classes because I'm a big fan of we do it, we show them, we do it, we show them, and then we tell them do what we're doing. So I think as people that live here, we do it at our homes, we get educated, we do it at our homes, and then we say, look, we're doing it, we want you to do it too. So it's kind of leading by example. We got to learn how to do it first,
We
right?
have earthworms in our backyard.
Yeah.
Wow. Soil health.
Earthworms in our backyard in Venice.
You
which
add
was
the
all-
organic matter, they'll find it.
Oh, yes, and please vote. Thank you all for coming, you're wonderful.